בוקר טוב. אנחנו מגיעים למושב שדן במועדון החלל, שזה שאלה מאוד מעניינת, מה זה בדיוק מועדון החלל, למה אנשים או מדינות רוצות להיות חברות במועדון החלל, למה יש מדינות שלא רוצות להיות חברות במועדון החלל, מה גורם למדינה קטנה כמו ישראל להצטרף למועדון הזה, מה קורה למדינות גדולות אחרות כמו אוסטרליה למשל שלא רוצות להצטרף למועדון הזה. אנחנו נדון בשאלות האלה ובעיקר באיך כל הדברים האלה הולכים להשתנות בעתיד מכל מיני בחינות. יש לנו 3 דוברים מאוד מעניינים בתחום הזה. הראשון, אני אעבור אולי לאנגלית. I'm honored to invite the first speaker in this session, who is the last until now administrator of NASA. We still don't have someone to replace him. I hope one day they will find someone. Who is a truly friend of Israel, also a Marine General, former administrator Bולדן, and he will talk about the future of space challenges as well as decision making in this area. General Bולדן, please.
Okay, we'll get started. There we go. Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure for me to be here, and I'm going to step around from behind here for a second because I have one question. Would the students in the audience just kind of raise your hand, and I'm going to come up to the front so I can see you. I just want to make sure that there were some of you. First of all, I really want to thank Professor Isaac Ben Israel, the chairman, and Aviv the director of the Israel Space Agency, for extending the invitation to me to join you all for this incredible conference and to participate in the 13th Ilan Ramon Space Conference. I also want to thank Rona Ramon. I don't know whether Rona is still here, but I want to thank Rona for her incredible, persistent dedication to promoting science, technology, engineering, and math to students not just here in Israel, but students all over the world. Back in Washington, D.C. these days, we're going through quite a bit of turmoil about science and its relevance and value. I thought it might be useful to talk a little bit about what I view as the critical importance of international cooperation in the day-to-day work of the civil space program at NASA. And to round out my comments, I think I must first of all address the challenges and the roles of NASA's partner international space agencies in leading space exploration, research, and technology development. The grand questions that you see on the screen there are typical of what goes through the minds of a standard run-of-the-mill NASA employee each day when they come to work. And I can tell you, it makes no difference whether they're working in aeronautics or in human spaceflight or science or technology development. They're always generally thinking about those three questions. And so our work is always spent in trying to pursue answers to them. One of my greatest joys while I served as the NASA administrator for the 2 terms of the Obama administration was getting the chance to meet with young people like those in our audience here, and I was glad to meet some of the students that I had an opportunity to be with when I was here last year, and I snuck off and got a chance to get into their laboratory, and they showed me all of the work that they were doing on CubeSats and nanosats and everything else. But, when I travel around and I talk to people, young people all over the world, it makes me feel young. Young is a relative term, as I look down at some of you, but take it from me, since I'm now 71, being any age less than 75 is young. You know, let me share with you a couple of quotes as my introduction to my remarks today. Quote number one, and it goes like this. The first day up there, and by up there, the speaker means being in space. The first day or two up there, you try to recognize the countries. Then the speaker names his own country and says, quote, "It stands out, it's very distinct." Then you keep missing the countries and you look only at the continents. By the sixth day, the whole world becomes a beautiful blue and white and yellow painting. Those boundaries really disappear. With me, they still are, unquote. Quote two, I quote, "There's no better place to emphasize the unity of people in the world than flying in space. We are all the same people. We're all human beings, and I believe that most of us, almost every single one of us, are good people," unquote. Some of you may know the first quote is from Prince Sultan Salman Abdulaziz Al Saud of Saudi Arabia after flying as a member of the STS-51G shuttle mission in June of 1985. And some of you, because you knew him personally, will recognize the second quote as being from the late Israeli astronaut Ilan Ramon during his ill-fated STS-107 mission in January of 2003. I thought about these two quotes quite a bit while my wife Jackie and I were not very far from here in Jerusalem for the 66th International Astronautical Congress, or IAC, in October of 2015, 2 years ago. I don't have to remind anyone in this hall that these are challenging times in this part of the world. There are, however, in fact, growingly challenging times throughout the world. Yet, there we were at an international conference at IAC in the holiest of cities, an international community gathered in that place to talk about our shared destinies. Having been blessed to see our planet from space, I can attest that from up there, you don't see borders. You see a place seemingly at peace, in tranquility, and one beautiful planet. I came here today to tell you, every one of you in this hall, that our planet needs you. We need your leadership. We need your ingenuity. We need your imagination. We need increased international cooperation and collaboration. We need each of our governments to step up to the challenge of charting a course for international exploration of our universe and for fulfillment of the centuries-long dream of sending humans beyond the bounds of low Earth orbit and increasingly deeper into our solar system. For those of you still in your 30s or younger, you're in that sweet spot in your life when, on the one hand, you're old enough to be role models and mentors. On the other hand, you're still young enough that your professional and civic lives are really just beginning, and you're more likely to be forgiven for your errors and inactions than later in life. Some of you may already be parents. Others might have younger siblings. Many of you likely supervise interns or younger staff. In many ways, your future lives and careers will be defined by how we respond to the question of how we as one planet can come together to tackle some of our greatest challenges. I'm here today to tell you that I believe space exploration is one of the most important tools this generation will use to bring about the better future that you deserve, a more peaceful future, a greener future. And it is the inherent responsibility of government space agencies to assume the risks, monetary and operational, to lay the groundwork for the private sector. Ours will be a future where human beings have pushed farther into the universe than ever before, not just to visit, but to stay there. To me, public diplomacy and cooperation in space go together like peanut butter and jelly. A favorite of my youngest granddaughter, Talia, who's in 6th grade. They just belong together. All told, at NASA today, there are roughly 800 active agreements with more than 120 international partners. While the purpose of all these agreements is generally scientific and technological, it's not lost on me that so many things when it comes to space, there's also a spin-off benefit. People across the world have generally viewed us Americans as generous, innovative, compassionate, and peaceful people. When I was the age of many of you under 40 in our audience, much was made about the fact that the US was in a space race with the Soviet Union. As author Diganet Pakowski, I hope I got that right, Dee. Implies in her book, The Power of the Space Club, this was the birth of the Space Club, or at least the beginning of reference to it. Today, a child who is 17 years or younger has lived every single day of her or his life while human beings from multiple countries are living and working together in space aboard the International Space Station. 17 years or younger, they have never taken a breath, not one single breath in their lives when human beings have not been living and working on the International Space Station through war and peace, through conflict, sometimes among the partners on the International Space Station. I still maintain that the space station ought to be considered for the Nobel Peace Prize. Think about this. Tens of thousands of people from across 15 countries, most represented by delegates in this hall. Countries that have been involved in its construction and operations, all working toward common goals of discovery, understanding, and human progress. The future of space exploration will create some remarkable opportunities for coming generations. In fact, it already has. And these opportunities can be summarized in one word: Mars. Let me explain why I say that. Our story begins with US President Dwight Eisenhower. You see, presidents since Eisenhower have floated the idea of sending humans to Mars. But about 14 years ago in the international space community, we had a horrible, horrible setback. On February 1st, 2003, we lost the Space Shuttle Columbia and the namesake for this conference, Ilan Ramon. Following that accident, the US made the decision that we would phase out of the shuttle program in favor of a new partnership with private industry and entrepreneurs to produce commercially available services to carry cargo and people to low Earth orbit. The shuttle had already had a remarkable 3 decades-long run like no other. I traveled to space 4 times on the shuttle, and I can tell you that I love that spacecraft. But every technology evolves over time, and although this was a decision to which I did not arrive lightly, I agreed with the recommendation, as did many in the space community at that time. In April 2010, President Barack Obama came to the Cape Canaveral, Florida, to the Kennedy Space Center, and he delivered what I consider a major space policy address. In it, he laid out a plan to replace our unsustainable exploration trajectory with a clear, affordable, financially sustainable, and ambitious way forward. He challenged us to develop a way forward that would expand humanity's presence deeper into the universe while strengthening America's leadership in the world space community. In that speech, President Obama called for expanding robotic exploration of the solar system. He asked NASA to move forward with the magnificent James Webb Space Telescope that will be sent 1.5 million kilometers from Earth a little over a year from now, launched on a European Space Agency Ariane 5 rocket from their launch site in Kourou, French Guiana. He directed that NASA lead the ISS partners to expand the life of the International Space Station to 2024, and he ramped up NASA's Earth science missions so that we can learn more about our own planet, including our changing climate. The centerpiece of the President's plan was and remains a journey to Mars that will culminate with sending astronauts from the family of spacefaring nations back to the moon in the decade of the 20s and to the red planet in the 2030s. To support this journey, the President envisioned that NASA would expand its international cooperation. He directed us to include more non-traditional partners around the world as we continued to develop the spacecraft, rockets, and other technologies that will take American and partner astronauts to deep space. In essence, he directed us to make a conscientious effort to expand the membership of the Space Club. As part of these efforts, we'd expand our work with commercial and international partners on the technologies that drive exploration and have a legacy of creating spin-off benefits here on Earth. And I'm referring both to economic and social and health and quality of life benefits. To replace the space shuttle, we'd work with American commercial partners to send cargo and crew to the station, thus helping facilitate a robust commercial space market and a family of dependable commercial launch systems. Today, 8 years after President Obama challenged NASA to send astronauts to Mars in the 2030s, I believe we're closer to sending human beings to the red planet than ever before in human history. Even in the words of President Donald Trump, we will unlock the mysteries of space. Meanwhile, a new consensus is emerging in the scientific and policy communities around the Global Exploration Roadmap, a future exploration strategy document developed in 2013 and presently under review for update through the efforts of some 25 international partners. Since these early days on our current exploration trajectory in December 2014, the Orion crew vehicle, which you were shown earlier today, flew farther into space than any spacecraft built for human passengers has flown in more than 4 decades. ESA, the responsible agency for the development of the Orion service module, continues its steady march forward toward final delivery and flight. The Space Launch System rocket that will someday propel international astronauts to deep space has moved from concept to development and construction. And I want to show you something right now, just for food for thought. We're not on the drawing board anymore. We're not talking about diagrams and ideas. We're actually cutting hardware. We're testing systems, and we've been doing so for a number of years. And we're just around the corner from flying SLS and Orion on what we call Exploration Mission 1. Sound. Let's see, we seem to have the, can you guys take it back there and just move it to the next one and then make it work? That has sound to it. It used to have sound. That's a modified version of the shuttle main engine, and they're going through tests at the Stennis Space Center now. That's the upgraded solid rocket booster that's been in test out in Utah. About to see a pilot's eye view. That's the way it will look to a crew member looking out the window. This was actually a camera mounted in the crew window of Orion during its actual re-entry back in December of 2014. There is a significant transformation that I strongly believe must be made, however, to optimize our chances for advancing our efforts to extend human presence deeper into our solar system. And I'm speaking mainly to me. This is me talking to myself and my friends from the United States. That transformation will be to include the men and women of the China Space Agency into the current family of nations working on the International Space Station. It will require us to include their ideas on lunar and Mars human exploration into our deliberations on the road ahead. Critically important today is that our journey is starting to capture the public's hearts, minds, and imagination. That's a tangible sense that I get as I travel around the world and meet folks that space exploration is in vogue right now. This coolness factor is what inspires young kids, young people and students like those of you in the audience to want to study science or write a science fiction story. And all these things make a difference. Inclusion of the Chinese into our team of innovators and explorers will allow us to make an even bigger difference. When I think of the world in which our kids and your kids and my granddaughters will be raising their own children, I see a world where their kids view human beings living and working on Mars as a fact of life, much as they view living and working on the International Space Station today. A future where our international community of spacefaring nations, the Space Club, is using Mars as a stepping stone to the rest of the solar system. I see a future where a robust private space industry is launching human beings, cargo, and satellites of all sizes to space at a significantly lower price point, thanks to the work we're doing today to make launches more affordable. A future in which we continue to advance emerging small satellite technologies like CubeSats and nanosats that are being worked on right here at Tel Aviv University. A future where the next great global space and technology company utilizes technology developed for space travel to develop a product that improves our quality of life here on Earth. A future where flying from Tel Aviv to Beijing is a better experience both for people in the plane and on the ground because we've succeeded in reimagining air traffic management. We've made flying cleaner, greener, safer, and quieter. I see a future where our grandchildren's children are drinking cleaner water, breathing cleaner air, and making use of cleaner energy, not only because the governments of our international partnerships have helped us better understand climate change, but because of the work our scientists are doing in areas like green aviation and water purification. I see a future where fewer citizens of this planet are losing a sister or a son because the medical technologies we perfect to protect our astronauts from exposure to radiation on a long-duration spaceflight help revolutionize medicine. Or because the technologies we've developed to detect signs of life on other planets continue to help emergency workers listen for beating hearts in the rubble after a disaster, as NASA's Finder device did in Nepal following last summer's earthquake. I see a world where girls and young people of color are more excited about pursuing education in science, technology, engineering, and math. A world where, unlike today, there will no longer be any states in the United States where no women take the advanced placement AP computer science exam, thanks in part to NASA's work to promote STEM education and careers. I see a future where people in even the most remote corners of our world have access to Wi-Fi, as do astronauts living and working in space. I see a future where maybe, just maybe, humanity finds the answer to the age-old question of whether we're alone in the universe. While none of us can know for sure what the future has in store, there's one thing we can say with a good degree of certainty. None of these things can happen on their own. They will require our governments and future leaders to continue to make the choices that point us in this direction. Future presidents and prime ministers, future heads of space agencies, and future citizens, we are embarked on a visionary course. It's my sincere hope that the future leaders from all sides of the political spectrum and throughout the world see it through, because I truly believe that sort of future I laid out is well within our grasp. As I close, I want to share with you a quote from a U.S. Department of State telegram written in July 1969. That date will mean something to some people my age. Quote, "The Russians' press was surprisingly generous with its praise of the men behind Apollo 11 and American space research in general during the days that the historic moon voyage was in progress. But now they seem to fear that the landing may have increased respect for Americans around the world." It was the Cold War, you have to remember. Another State Department telegram read, 5,000 Hungarians walked through the American embassy yesterday. They came to pay tribute to Apollo 11. They came in overalls spattered with paint, in smocks, in tie and suit, without shirts, old and bent, young and athletic, students, workers, old people. It noted that even secret police were cooperative and good-natured. Indira Gandhi, then the Prime Minister of India, declared that moon landing was one of the most exciting and significant moments in human history. The Queen of England reportedly stayed up with her children to watch. The Pope spoke about humankind's pursuit of a new destiny. In New York City, people took to the streets to dance and celebrate. The Houston Chronicle wrote, "For a moment, it seemed that all men were brothers." Communist journalists congratulated American scientists.
Israeli photographers beamed at Egyptian broadcasters. Brown hands grasped white ones, and few eyes were dry. The word went out in 30 languages to 1,535 radio and television networks, to 1,056 newspapers, and to 445 magazines in 57 countries. We witnessed similar worldwide reactions on the evening that Curiosity touched down on Mars, after surviving the 7 minutes of terror through the Martian atmosphere 4 years ago. Just think of what it will be like when you're with your loved ones, watching the first astronauts from Earth reach Mars. I plead with you to join with me in pursuit of this vision and help us to continue to turn science fiction into science fact and make the impossible possible. Shalom.
אפשר להדליק את האורות בבקשה? באולם? Okay, I wanted you to say that there are almost 1,000 people stayed 9 hours waiting for your speech. See? Thank you very much for the inspiring, very inspiring talk.